Okay, guys, so I'm recording this in a stairwell, and I'm just going to hope that nobody clunks down the stairwell and interrupts us for the next 8 minutes or so. Then this day we're introducing Dr. E. Dr. E is our structure for solving constructed responses where we critique someone else's reasoning, which is one of the mathematical practices in constructing viable arguments, and it's also one of the things that's tested on the PARCC in subclaim C. So we'll talk more about that in meetings, but basically the PARCC is broken down into 4 subclaims, and you get like little bars for each one. A is major content, B is minor content, C and D are both types of constructed responses. C is the construct viable arguments, and D is modeling, like solving story problems. So anyway, we're focusing here, which is a subclaim that's always been really low for us, but that we've improved in on the years. And one of the ways is by giving kids a structure. So that's called Dr. E. And whenever they have to correct someone else's mistake, they're going to do this on their paper, divide it into 4 squares, and fill that in here, okay? Dr. E stands for do it, retell, explain, explain. And one of the things that one of the reasons why we have it is because kids tend to jump to explain. They do this one piece. But first, they actually have to solve the problem out. Like, they can't just look at it and eyeball it and have the mistake jump out at them. That's not the best practice, right? We want work shown. So they have to do it. And then they also tend to focus on what the person should have done. Or like another way of doing that is saying what the person didn't do. Like, the person didn't borrow, or the person should have scratched it out, or whatever. Instead of saying what the person did do and what they might have been thinking. And this is where the retell is where, like, you're really putting yourself in the person's shoes and saying what they were probably thinking, and all in this box, which is a change from teachers where we've done it in the past, why that thinking is wrong. So let's say, for example, so-and-so said 32 hundredths was less than 3,156, because 32 is less than 3,156, right? I'm going to, first of all, do the problem myself. So I'm going to, line it up the way I would be taught. That's 32 hundredths. I'm going to, do the work the way my teacher taught me to do, right? But then when I retell, I'm not just going to start by being like, 32 hundredths bit. Like, a lot of times kids are like, the person is wrong because they had the wrong answer. They don't say it like that, right? But they're like, the mistake the person made was that 32 hundredths is actually bigger. Well, yeah, that's like just another way of saying they were wrong. What were they thinking? What was wrong about their thinking, right? So, right, so-and-so probably thought 32 hundredths was less because 32 is a smaller number. They weren't thinking about the value of that 32. And then going into the first explain, which is to explain the steps, explain the procedure. I know 32 hundredths is bigger because I changed it into 3,200. And then I lined it up, and I started by looking in the thousands place, and then I saw that 3,200 had more hundreds. And then there's the second explain. And the reason, returning teachers, we've shifted all that stuff to the retell, and the first explain is explain the right procedure. And now we're going to explain the big idea, which is something that's also often quite missing. Not just saying I line up my numbers and these are the steps, but anytime I'm comparing numbers, I want to compare them in standard form and look in the biggest place value first, because that's worth the most. Something like that, right? So we've got a lot of work to do here to kind of get there. And the first step is explain this to teacher, and then just feedback, putting exemplars under the doc can. I know that's a long time for me to talk, to just frame it. We haven't even gone past the first slide. But I want you to have the idea of what we're trying to get to. And now we can think about sharing it with kids, right? So introducing Dr. E. We can use Dr. E when we respond to a constructed response. Constructed response is like a response we have to build, like construction. It's not just made out of one little answer. It's like explaining how we built something. And every constructed response has more than one part, is worth more than one point, and no matter what the directions say, you should explain your big math idea in it. So this is an example of a constructed response looks like, and this is going to be worth more points than just like a regular straightforward multiple choice, and you're going to have to make sure your big idea is in here. Third graders, and in your case, this will say fourth graders. If you're a fourth grade teacher, it's the same, right? Construct the response by reading all the parts carefully, solving, answering all the parts in complete sentences, and then explaining your understanding of the big math idea. When we're correcting someone's work, we're going to have this thing called Dr. E. But before we get there, you guys just think like, and at this point, teachers, they need whiteboards. Where is the person's mistake? And I'm sorry, I have here, watch me as I try it. Before they watch you, to have them think about it themselves for a minute, and you're gonna have some kids who write on whiteboards, you're gonna have some kids who explain the wrong thing, and so giving them a moment to kind of share out would be probably a good way to break up this long thing. And then, as you try it, you're gonna draw out something. You can connect what you're doing to what some of the students did, right? So now, watch me as I try it. I'm gonna break my paper up into Dr. E. Do it, retell, explain, explain. Here's where I do the problem. Here's where I retell what the mistake was and why it's wrong. Here's where I explain the right steps, and here's where I explain the big idea, and that's all there. So, first I do the problem. 285 plus 179. I'm just realizing there's an echo here, and probably no one can hear me, but we're just gonna have to hope and pray it works out at this point. Okay, so when I do the problem, not just look at it, but really do it, I can see the mistake is here, right? I can see that there's some kind of mistake. Now I need to put myself in their shoes and ask myself, like, why did they get a 5 and I got a 6? What must they have been thinking, right? And now I can, like, correct it, right, in here, and I'm not going to write it all out. I hope you will jot it down so you have it. Mrs. Ramish added in the tens place and got 15. She must have added the 8 and the 7 and forgot about the 1. But she has to add the 1 that she carried over from the ones place, right? She should have added, that's where now I'm in the second explain. She should have added 1 plus 8 plus 7 equals 16 in the tens place. So do you hear here, I'm saying the retell, I'm really saying what she must have done wrong and why it's wrong. She added 8 plus 7 is 15. That's wrong because there was more tens that had been carried over from before. And those had to be included as well. So oftentimes it can be like, Mrs. Ramish did. That's wrong because. Those are our sentence starters here. And I don't always give sentence starters for constructive responses, but for Dr. E, for sure I do. And then, right, explain the right thing. She should have added 1 plus 8 plus 7 equals 15. Here, so that's a good sentence starter here. And then for the second explain, it's the big idea. And we're going to be talking a lot about this in every constructed response. We have to make sure kids include the big idea, even if it doesn't ask for it, that we're generalizing, that we're talking about some bigger thing that isn't just about this problem. Some words you might hear when you're talking about the big idea: always, anytime, whenever. because then I'm generalizing. I'm talking about rules that are true for all problems. So I always need to add whatever I've carried over from a smaller place. Where anytime I add, there's a chance I'm going to have too much in that place, and then I'm going to have to add it for the next place, right? That's the big idea. So this is what we did, and this is how you're going to remember it, kids. Now it's your turn. And when I imagine doing this, this is a gradual release. So kids should work on paper, like get out a paper and pencil on top of their whiteboard. They're sitting on the carpet. And you don't have them do the whole constructive response. You have them just do it. Then go over it, right? Then just do the first retell. Go over it. Be careful that this retell isn't accidentally being like, she should have, or she didn't. The retell is explaining what they did do and why that is wrong. Then they do the explain, you go over it. Then they do the big idea, you go over it. Then there's going to be another constructive response for them to work on independently, okay? There's no exit ticket on this day. I will provide you with 2 constructed responses for independent practice. So after you do this constructed response, there's 2 more to work on. And that's it.